Begin the current Daf Masech the Shabbos Daf Tzadi Dal. Begin 5 lines down with the top of the Yomit. We continue explaining the halacha of the previous Mishnah, which we were discussing things that could be pater, even though generally you'd be chayiv, because they're secondary to something else, or if they're less than the measurement for something that's necessary. Shiur's co-sponsor Bekazach and Yecheskel to anytime Daf HaChaim. Everyone joining us here, greatly appreciate it. So some of the things we're going to be speaking about today's Daf is carrying a living being on Shabbos. Is that a chayiv for carrying someone that's a human being? This we have we're going to explain the classic machlekes that we mentioned in the previous Daf between Shimon and Yehuda regarding malacha shein tzurich legufa. If you're doing something that's not necessary for the thing itself, it's secondary to the action that you're doing, if that's considered that you're going to be chayiv or that you're going to be pater. Additionally, we're going to speak about next Mishnah regarding removing fingernails by hand. Is that a chayiv of the malach of geizes on Shabbos? How about removing hair by hand? And regarding braiding hair, is that an issa d'oraisa or is that an issa d'rabbanan? Which we're going to start on today's daf and continue with on the next daf. Some of the key terms and concepts we're going to speak on today's daf is if you eat two, that's just a classic concept, but it's really any isser. If you eat two olive-sized pieces of forbidden fats and one lapse of awareness, are you going to be chayiv for one liability or two liabilities? Malach of chaynais is atzmai, a living person, he carries himself. Malacha shein tzurich legufa, like we said, is something that it's machlekes Rashi and Teisa to qualify a classic machlekes regarding, but it's I don't really need this thing, I just don't want it over here, the way Rashi says it. Also the concept of gadol kavod abrius, that how great is the dignity you have to give to a human being, should even override a negative prohibition in the term. And also the isab lo yilbash gever simlas ish, which is a man is not allowed to do feminine types of activities or grooming types of things that's considered appropriate for a woman. A man is not allowed to do those types of things. So we begin the current daf, 5 lines down at the top of the Yomit. Continue to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah. We said, as sachai b'mita, you're carrying out a living person in a bed. So we said, pater avalamita, you can be exempt even for the bed. Why? Because carrying a live person, which is what our Gemara is going to discuss right now, you're not chayiv for carrying a living person. So the bed is secondary to the person, and if you're not chayiv on the person, you're not going to chayiv on the bed either, because it's a tuffle. We consider it secondary to the person. But one thing says the Gemara, leim masin, shall we say that our Mishnah is Reb Nosson is going like Reb Nosson, but not like Reb Nosson, because it's time to learn the Brisa. Brisa says like this: someone's carrying out on Shabbos an animal, a wild animal, a bird to a shusram. So the Tanakhama says Rabbanan, they say bein chayim bein shchutin, whether it's alive or whether it's slaughtered, chayim you're carrying out an animal on Shabbos. Who cares if it's dead or alive? You're carrying out. Nosson disagrees. He says ashchutin chayim. If it's slaughtered animal, okay, it's a dead animal, then you're chayim. You're carrying out an animal. But v'achayim patur, if you're carrying a live animal, interesting. If you're carrying a live animal to Rishus Ram, you can be exempt. Why? Why should you be exempt? Why is that not the classic haitzah? Shachai noisetz atzmai. Because a living creature carries themselves. You're not really carrying the animal is carrying itself. Now, the Ri, just interestingly, asked, why are you going to be patur? If it's because a living creature makes himself lighter, but even if it's a lighter load, you're still carrying it, you should be chai. And if it's because it's like two people doing it together, you should be pater, but that should be what's called zeh yachal v'zeh eina yachal. Because the person cannot carry themselves, they're eina yachal. The one who's carrying it has the ability to carry them, even if they're dead, should be zeh yachal v'zeh eina yachal. Which we said in the previous stuff, the one who could is the one who's chayiv. Why are you pater? What this concept is mentioned many times in Shas, why is that an exemption? So the Ri says, importantly, because we learn that all the malachas from the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, they never carried a living creature. Because even the tachash and the rams that they used for the curtains, they would take them by their feet. They would walk by themselves. The chilazim that they used for the tchelas, they would squeeze it out right away, and they never had what?
It's not what it is. The action that they did. That's what we learn from the Mishnah. The Mishnah they carried, somebody here also they carried. It's not what they carried. They didn't carry a chick.
Right. But the living creature. I hear it's a good shayla. Exactly. You know the pratim. But the way Taisa says, I hear the point you're saying. They never had exactly, but the living thing, yeah. Whatever what we learn out Haitzah, we learn out from that they take from the wagons to the street. That's from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. So the Ri saying, he's asking a good shayla, saying that prati. How do we know how far we go? And the Ri seems to say that since a living thing that we do learn out that they did take out, they never took it out in the way of Haitzah, and therefore. We don't have the halacha of something. In other words, you're right, a shiur or whatever, it's still the same quality. Here, it's not the same quality because you have something that's lightening its load. So it still is asking, well, who cares is lightening the load? You're still carrying a lot of load. But we never have that type of category that something that's lightening its load that they ever did in the Mishkan, yeah, it's a good shayla. It's I like the shayla a lot.
Isn't it the shayla also if it could walk on its own, or let's say a baby?
So Taisus later talks about regarding a baby that will talk about if that could be different than a human being, and we'll see a difference between the animal and human being. But Taisus just says, important Yesod, he says they didn't do it in the Mishkan, so therefore we're not going to be chayiv for carrying a living thing because it carries its own weight. But one thing is, the Gemara says, shall we say that our mission that says you're exempt for carrying a living person is because it's going like Reb Nosson, not like Rabban. On that Rava says, Nafil Tim Rabban. You could even say it's going like Rabban. Ad kan like pligi Rabban le Reb Nosson. Where do we find that machlekes? Is look at the case that we quoted from the Brisa. Is bebehem chay ba'oif. Why would we differentiate between the animal, a wild animal, and the bird and a human being? I'm talking about chay, a living person. What's the difference between a human being or a mammal? Is because by the animals, the meshavrti navshayim. What happens is that they straighten themselves out like a stick, and they weigh their body downward, and they make themselves heavier to try to get out of the one who's carrying them. So that's why you're going to be chayiv according to the Rabbanan in the case of an animal. But a living person, this noisius atzmai, who carries his weight, a human being, seems like that when he's being carried, does differently than the animal. The animal stiffens themselves up, and therefore, according to Rabbanan, you can be chayiv. They don't hold that an animal carries itself. But a human being that does carry his weight, because only a dead person is called dead weight, and a fellow Rabbanan might do it, then again, it sounds like maybe if a human being would do that, then maybe that would be the same case. But a regular person that's being carried, then even the Rabbanan would agree that generally doesn't do that, and therefore they would agree in the halacha of the Mishnah that says you can be patur for carrying out the bed and the dead and the living person would be even like Rabbanan, because they agree a chay neses by human being. They only disagree by animals. However, on that as the Gemara, Amalei Rav Bar Havla Rav, he says, but vadit nan, we learn in the Mishnah Masechtas Avodah Zarah. It says ben b'seira matur basus. Ben b'seira, he permits by a horse, which is this is a different halacha regarding halacha of selling to a non-Jew. You're not allowed to sell generally animals to a non-Jew because it might come to lend an animal to a non-Jew, and if you lend an animal to a non-Jew, he might come to do malach with it on Shabbos, and that's a problem because your animal cannot do work on Shabbos called shvis behemte. So you can't sell to a non-Jew because you might lend to a non-Jew, and then it might come to do work with it on Shabbos. But Rabbi says you're allowed to sell a horse to a non-Jew. But time in the Brisa why? But Meseir Mata Besusi lets you sell a horse to a non-Jew. Because even if he's going to do work with the horse on Shabbos, it's a malacha shein chayovin lav chatas. That's not going to be a liability of a chatas. Why? Because what's the work of a horse? Even if a person would do the work that a horse does, a person would not be chayav chatas. Because what does a horse do generally? A horse is meant for riding on it. Now, even if a person carried a person on him, let's say a person was like a horse, and he did the malacha that a horse does, he would not be chayiv, because the person that's riding on that person carries himself. The whole reason why we say now sell a large animal to a non-Jew is because you might come to lend it or to rent it to him, and that's forbidden because he's going to be violating work with your animal. It's not true. With a horse, even if he would lend or rent a horse to him, would not be nisidai reisa, because that's not considered malacha by the horse. Shvis behemte is specifically malacha, and that's not malacha because what he's carrying, the person on top of the horse, he's not really carrying him. Just like you wouldn't be considered carrying him because achai neses atzmai. Now the question is coming now. So it says the Gemara. First of all, Amar B'Yechon, he said, in regards to this halacha ben beseira, he said ben beseira v'Reb Nosson, who we just quoted before. Amar davar echad. They say the same thing, which is that the person riding on top is carrying himself. Says the Gemara, but it's like you just said, that the Rabbanu do not disagree with Nosson. When do they disagree and say that no, the living creature is not carrying itself, and that you're going to be chayiv for carrying it is only by animals? Because they stiffen themselves. So Reb Nosson still says it still carries itself. You're not going to be chayiv. Rabban say no, you're going to be chayiv. But you said by a human being that they agree that a person is different. A person, he carries his own weight, and then you're going to be patur according to everyone. So the ma'iri ben Beseir Reb Nosson. Why is Rabbi Yechon saying that Ben Beseir and Reb Nosson are saying the same halacha, that they both agree that when you carry a person, you're not really carrying anyone because he carries himself, so the horse you could sell, and so too when you carry a person you can be exempt. But Ramad, you said that for Rabbanan. You said Rabbanan agree when you carry a person. Why you say Reb Nosson? Rabbanan also agree by a person. The horse carries a person. You said that the Rabbanan don't disagree by a person. So why is Rabbi Yechon saying then that Reb Nosson and Ben Beseir are saying the same halacha? It's not just Reb Nosson. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yechon, you're right. When did Rabbi Yechon say that specifically it's Reb Nosson like Ben Beseira was Besus HaMinyuchad La'ifes. We're talking about a horse that's designated for birds. And that's the type of a horse that would be chayv according to Rabbanan, because a bird does not carry itself. And therefore the horse would be considered carrying the bird, because a bird will weigh itself down. Says the Gemara, is there a horse that is designated for a bird? You tell me that's the case of Ben Beseira, that he agrees with Reb Nosson that we're talking about, it carries a bird? Aren't horses meant for people? Says the Gemara, yes, it could debate vayodan, which Rashi explains that means to say the bird hunters, they would have on top of horses certain types of birds that are living birds, like the sparrow and different types of predatory type of birds, to catch other birds. So that type of a horse is what we're saying. But Meseira says, like Reb Nosson, because regarding animals, the Rabbanan hold that it doesn't carry itself, and therefore you're going to be chayiv. Reb Nosson is the one that says by animals, even by birds, you're going to be potter. That's like Ben Beseira says you could sell a horse to a non-Jew, because even if you would lend it to him, it would not be a malacha with the horse, because what the horse does, even for the bird, is not considered that of carrying it. Now the Gemara, however, makes two different qualifications in regards to this teaching of this machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan, he says the Reb Nosson. Reb Nosson, however, agrees, although he says that generally carrying a living being is not considered that of carrying it, because it carries its own weight. He agrees with kafis. If let's say the bird or the person is tied down, then you can't say it's carrying itself, because he's tied. He's dead to himself. He can't carry himself. He does not elevating his weight, and then you can be chay. However, not the Gemara asks him, he says, but v'hani parsoy. You have these Persians, they command the kfisi damu. It's almost like as if that they're bound. Meaning, the way Rashi says it, they ride on the horses when they're cloaked with wide garments, and they themselves are very delicate people, and they are motionless. They don't move. They're like dead weight almost. The story that said that they said the same thing. The problem is, you said Reb Nosson agrees when a person is tied, that then you would be considered carrying him. But if Reb Nosson agrees when he's tied, how could Ben Beseira be the same as Reb Nosson? Because a living thing carries itself. But Ben Beseira permits to sell the horses to any non-Jew, because when it says Nachri, which includes all the nations of the world, even other Persians. When you're selling a horse to a Persian, and the person is like dead weight, because he's a Persian, because they have these heavy cloaks, these heavy garments, and still Ben Beseira says, you're allowed to go ahead and have the horse carry the person. But that means to say the person is kafis, he's tied down. And you see that still Ben Beseira permits you to sell it to the non-Jew. If that's considered malacha on Shabbos, because you're saying Reb Nosson agrees by kafis that would be considered carrying the person because he's bound. Here also the heavy garments, these wealthy fat fur, whatever it is that they wear, is almost like they can't move. And you see they need help to move. You see that's not like Reb Nosson. So I think, no, it's not true. Hasmov did it by the Persians. Ramus rucha, it's a elevated spirit, means it's arrogance. It's a big ego, who denakat lahu, that's what they grab a hold of. The reason why they don't move by feet is that they can't move, and they simply can't move. They're almost tied down. It's simply arrogance. It's a sign of a prominence. And as the Gemara brings a story to illustrate this, Ahu Pardashcha, there was a certain officer, the Rosach Malke Levei, that the king was angry at him. He ran 3 parsi by foot. So you see suddenly Meken Leifen, right? It's just that it's arrogant. It's not really that he's bound. But someone that's really bound, that would come out according to that interpretation that you would be chayiv. But a regular chayiv, even by the Persians, is going to be considered like Reb Nosson, because they're not really considered bound, and therefore it's the same heter, that of Reb Nosson and that of Ben Beseira. Do you know look at the Mishnah that said, it's a meis b'mita. Let's say you carried a dead person in the bed. So then you can be chayiv, because a dead person doesn't carry himself, obviously, and therefore you can be chayiv for itself. So too, an olive-sized piece of the dead person, which Taisus explains that this is the source where we find throughout Shas that according to Yehuda, Malocha Shem Zuchel Guf, you can be chayiv on, because we assume the Tanakama of Reb Shimon of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and you see that even though it's a Malocha Shem Zuchel Guf, you don't need the dead person over there. You just don't want it over here. So you don't really need the Malacha of Haitzah. Haitzah is you need it at point B. You don't really need it at point B. You just don't want it over here. So and still you see Yehuda holds you can be chayiv for taking out the dead person, so there shouldn't be a tumah over here. That's the classic source. We mentioned this many times in this Masechta and throughout Shas. This is the source says Taisus, from this halacha of carrying out a dead person, now b'chul etc. But Shimon in the Mishnah said that you're going to be pater. And we mentioned the previous stuff that we'll mention over here. Taisus brings over here from the Re, and this is a classic machlekes Rashi and Taisus, what's considered malacha shein tzich legufa. The way we said it up until now was the way Rashi says it. Taisus says, what does it mean, the malacha that you don't need for itself is, for example, if you're doing a malacha, and you don't need that intended purpose like it was in the Mishkan. You need it for some other purpose. Because in the Mishkan, the purpose was for the thing itself, and the root of why you're coming to do it is from the Mishkan. So therefore, let's say taking out a dead person, you don't need the dead person. The Mishkan, when you carry something out, you needed that thing. That's what I mean malacha shein tzich legufa. It's not the way it was intended, like the malacha was done in the Mishkan. If it's not done that way, that's going to be malacha. It goes through at great length to explain many different cases according to this principle and difficulties with Rashi interpretation. Now the Gemara says, to qualify this machlekes Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda regarding malacha shein tzich legufa, so Amar Rabbi Chanan Rabbi Yechon and Amar Rabbi Yosef Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says the same halacha. Paita Rabbi Shimon said that you're going to be exempt on malacha shein tzich legufa as you continue to tell the base. Af b'maitzias ames lekayver. Even if you're taking out a dead person to bury him, it's still going to be considered malacha shein tzich legufa. In other words, it's a chiddush over here. You don't say that, maybe only Rabbi Shimon exempts you when you're just taking the dead person to put him outside, where there's no need for, not for the one who's carrying it out, and not for the dead person that in other words, what's called gava chavtza, the person. Exactly, because if you say that if you take him out to bury, so then that is a malacha tzich legufa because it's for the dead person. Now, what's important for this discussion is there's two people going to be speaking about it here. Two elements. There's the gavra and the chavtza in classic brisker terminology. The gavra is the person, the chavtza is the object. So whenever you have a relation with something else, you're carrying something out. It's you and the thing you carry. So the chiddush that the Gemara is saying over here is, even if he's taking out the dead person to bury him, it's for the need of the dead person. You're still going to be pater. There's still going to be malacha shein tzich legufa because you, the person, don't need that. The dead person needs that, but you don't need that. For you, what you're doing, it was no necessity. That's malacha shein tzich legufa. Even though with there, Rabbi Shimon says you're going to be pater. That's considered malacha shein tzich legufa. Now, but Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi Shimon does agree, b'mar, by a hoe, type of a utensil used in farming, that's lachfer by, that you need it for digging, so the one who's carrying it out needs it. But the thing itself doesn't need it, but you need it outside. Or the Sefer Torah likris by, let's say you take out a Sefer Torah to read from it. In a chap, there's with COVID, you take out a Sefer Torah, you realize you take out Rosh Hashanah, Chayiv, you can be Chayiv. Obviously, Rabbi Shimon would agree with it. The if that would be considered a malacha that you don't need, then el malacha tzich legufa Rabbi Shimon. That this that you say that malacha tzich legufa according to Rabbi Shimon, isn't that the classic that you need it? I mean, how could that be malacha tzich legufa? You need to save a Torah there. You need at point B. Of course you can be chayav. Says the Gemara, no. Now the what would you say? Adeika legufa ulegufa. You would think Rabbi Shimon holds so lenient that you only chayav for haitzah or whatever the malacha is until you need it for yourself and for the object. Both of them are necessary for this action. For example, let's say the mar, the hoe. Lasos leitas. Not only do you need the hoe out there to dig, but actually you need to bring it to point B because it got a little bit nicked and has a notch over there, and you need to fix the plate to fix it. So not only do I need it there, but the hoe itself needs to be there. Or let's say and to dig. Or let's say Sefer Torah lahagiva likris boy. Sefer Torah, not only do I need it to be at point B because I need to read from it, it needs to be edited. So I need it there, and the Sefer Torah needs to be there. So that's what I would have thought to say. Only then is that get malacha tzich legufa. That's the chiddush that the Gemara is telling us. That Rav is saying that no. All you need is when you say malacha tzich legufa, it's for the person, not for the object. And that's the chiddush. But again, even if it's legufa, even if it's for the thing itself, like the dead person, you take him to bury. And according to Rabbi Shimon would be pater because that's still get malacha shein tzich legufa. I don't need him over there. He needs to be there. I don't need him over there, and that's the primary thing according to Rabbi Shimon. Now, a related discussion the Gemara brings the story Hahu Shichva, there was a certain dead person. Dava b'droikros in this place called Droikros. Shar Rav Nachman Yitzchak lafuk the Karmelis. Rav Nachman Yitzchak permitted to take him out to a Karmelis because he was either in a state of disgrace, either because there was a fire or he's in the heat. And it's a muktzeh, not move a dead person. So Rashi says you put him a loaf of bread or a young child, but that's always a heter to move a dead person. But one thing, he has to be permitted to take him out to a different area where there wasn't a fire, wasn't a heat, which was to a carmelist, which was rabbinic domain. On that, he says, wait, come on. Who are you going like that? You permitted them to carry out this dead person on Shabbos at the carmelist. Reb Shimon, like Reb Shimon, who holds that that's considered malacha shein tzrich leguf when you're moving a dead person. I don't need him over there. He needs to be over there. So for me to carry him is not the malacha deraisa of haitzah because it's ein tzrich legufa. But now he says, wait a second. Even the part Reb Shimon, when did Reb Shimon hold you exempt? That's only mechiyev chatas. Malacha shein tzrich legufa only takes out the biblical liability. According to Reb Shimon, and I'll do a haitzah. For something you don't need at point B, it's still rabbinically prohibited. How are you let them move the dead person to the karmelis initially? So Amalei said to him, by God, the Eilis Be'ad, you also would bring him in over there. Why? Because Vafil Rabbi Yehuda, sorry, even according to Rabbi Yehuda would be permitted. Even Rabbi Yehuda holds Malach Hashem Zaguv Yechayev, he would hold it permitted. Why? Because the Mikamil, did I say that they could take the dead person to the public domain? The Carmelists come in, all they said was to take him to the Carmelists. Because God will cover up is how great is the dignity of a human being, that it overrides a negative prohibition in the Torah, the law of Leisasa, which is the source of rabbinic halacha, like over here, we see that yes, the dignity of the dead person will override the rabbinic domain of carrying from this rishus to the Carmelists, and yes, that's why I permitted, but therefore it's nothing to do with malacha in the gufa. Even Rabbi Yehuda, it would be permitted to move the dead person. Now, continue related with the halacha of the Mishnah, the Gemara brings, it's going to come back, we're going to bring a raya from our Mishnah regarding the following halacha, which discusses an olive-sized piece of a dead person. It's not hasim. We learned about it in the Mishnah, Mishnah Masechet Negoyim, that says the following halacha: Hatoilish timoni tuma. Someone tears out the signs of impurity of a baheres. A baheres is a fleck, is a nega stain on a person's body. That part of that makes it tamei is it has to have two white hairs. So let's say someone tears out the two white hairs, or vehichva hamichi, he burns the raw flesh. One of the signs of tumah of a se'es is raw flesh. Now the person burns the flesh so that it won't be raw anymore, so that it's not going to be considered michya, so that it will be tar for the neg of tzaras. So if he does any one of these two things, let's say he violates a negative prohibition in the Torah that says he's shama b'neged tzaras. You have to safeguard, you're not allowed to tear off the signs of tumah of tzaras, and if you do, you violated a negative prohibition. Now Itma, we learned on this the following brisa: Achas mishtayim. Let's say there was only two white hairs over there. Remember, the minimum of tumah is if you have two white hairs. Let's say he only tears out one of the two white hairs. Says the Brisa Chayv is going to be liable because he removed the tumah. Because you can't have tumah less than two white hairs, as the Brisa teaches in Torah's Kaim, it says here, which is two. So therefore, you can be Chayv Malchus for tearing out one of the hairs because you removed the tumah by taking out one of the hairs. Achas mishalish, but let's say you tear out one of the three hairs. Oh, so now we have a machlokes. Rav Nachman Machayv. Rav Sheish Lamapata, and the Gemara explains why. Rav Nachman Machayv says you're going to be liable. Why? Ahani Maisa, what you did was effective, and therefore you're violating Hishama b'neged tzaras. Why? What do you mean? There's still two white hairs. There's still tamei. Because the if another one's going to be taken out, azla tuma, there's not going to be. In other words, yes, right now there's still tumah, but what?
Why is it his problem?
Because he brought it one step closer to being the removal.
Remains in the same tumah.
Yeah, but he wasn't Hishama b'neged tzaras. Because he's, in other words, if let's say, you can say this by riots or whatever, this and that, like, I didn't do anything, but when you created an environment, you were abetting, and the guys who didn't step on his neck, right? The guys who were nearby, right? They created an environment, it wasn't his shama. It wasn't his shama because that's famous from Giuliani, the broken glass, right? Creating an environment sets it up for the next thing to happen, for some guy to now to go do a crime. What? No, because not necessarily. But if one hair is going to be pulled out, yes, your action then retroactively had caused this thing to remove from tumah. Yeah, it's a good point. That's the other mandama, what you're saying. The other mandama says that Rav Sheish Sama, first, he says the imish takal chadachid azla tumah. Sheish Sama said, no, he says hashtami, ha isla tumah. What do you mean? Right now there's the tumah, and therefore you didn't do anything. It wasn't effective. But the other mandama says no. Ultimately, you weren't hishama, but hishama or shmir is always creating a fence. You just weakened the fence because you took it one step closer.
If he did, there's more of a chance that nothing will ever happen.
You want to know?
It will always stay.
You're saying the laws of probability mean things will stay the same unless.
It's what you took out 1 out of 3, everything will stay the same. There's something that might happen, but now his action has nothing to do with the actual issa.
Right. Whoever's going to do the next one.
Not like a gram by Shabbos or any Hazakah, anything. It wasn't Gorim anything.
But he was causing. Let's say a hair is going to get pulled out by mistake by just not by himself.
Something that we do. We don't say.
But it's still not his sham. But it's still not his sham.
Yes,
But it's still not his sham. You're making it more. You're making more of a likelihood that you're going to remove the tumah.
That was being very clear. Sham of the 2 hairs.
Yeah, but by pulling out one of the 3, he's creating the likelihood, probability somewhat. Let's say 0.1%, whatever it is, because hairs get pulled out, right? But now that you have lower threshold of likelihood because you're getting closer. You have only 2 hairs now. Yeah, it's a yesh lad. So, but that's the machlekes, and the Gemara actually follows like you're saying, like Rav Shloimy Schwartzberg Pater, and that Gemara actually brings proofs to this. Rav Shloimy says, where do I know this? That you're not going to be chayiv because if. So it's from our Mishnah. It's not like we learned the Mishnah. Mishnah says, v'chein kizayis min hames. We said if you carry out an olive-sized piece of a dead person, or for kizayis min hamelo, or an olive-sized piece of a dead animal, so it's chayiv, you're going to be liable for itzah and Shabbos. Now, hachatzi zayis, the inference obviously is if you carried only half an olive size of the piece, but you'd be exempt. You didn't carry out the shiur, which would be significant with the laws of tumah, which is only kizayis. The problem is, B'tanya the Brisa says chatzi zayis chayiv. Interestingly, a Brisa says if you carried an olive-sized piece, you'd be chayiv. So how do you resolve the contradiction? So this is part of the question. My love, isn't it obvious? How the Tanya chayiv? This is the Brisa says you'd be chayiv. It's because the afik chatzi zayis mikazayis. If you take out a half an olive-sized piece from an olive, so what you did was significant because now you removed it. That's not going to be tumah anymore in your house because it's going to be less than a shiur. But v'hadid not part of this, we learn the Mishnah being exempt, is because the apik chatizayis michtizayis umechza. Think about the case. If you took out a half olive-sized piece from an olive and a half, although you're making the measurement smaller, but it's not considered significant, and we don't say that it's effective, that if, let's say, you're going to take away another smaller piece, there's not going to be a measurement? No, but right now, when you took away the half a zayis, you still have a zayis left. So therefore you see, like Rav Sheshes, that right now, ultimately, you did not diminish the tumah, even though you made it less, you still see that you're going to be pater. That's like Rav Sheshes. But the Gemara says, Rav Nachman, he would reject the right. He'd say, no, whether you're taking a half a zayis from a kazayis, or a half a zayis from a kazayis and a half, you would be chayiv. And the reason why you'd be chayiv is because it is significant. The act that you're taking away, although there's still tumah, is still lowering the threshold. I've heard not pater. What do you do with our Mishnah that says you can be pater by carrying a half a zayis? That's the apik chatzi zayis mimes gadol. That's specifically if you're taking a half olive of a large dead person, like Tesa says, not specifically a large, means that when there's 2 or 3 zaysim, that's not really significant. That's a similar, like a little bit, what we'd say, that's not really lowering the threshold, because what's the probability of that happening? But it's right there, all you need is one more mistake, and then that's it, it's done, so then that is significant, and if then you would be chayiv. Our Mishnah is talking about a case from Mes Gadol, if you're going to be pater. Turn to the next Mishnah, where we go into the Tailadis, certain derivatives of certain Av Malachis in the following Mishnayos. So the Mishnah begins like this: if someone takes off his fingernails, zubizu, you use one fingernail to remove the other fingernail. Many people do that; they go with their fingernails and they cut off their fingernails. Or he bites it with his teeth. Or same thing, v'chein tsari. So too, so let's say someone pulls out the hair of his head with his hands, or v'chein sfamai, or by his mustache, or v'chein zikana, or by his beard. That's one category of cases. Or v'chein hagidelis, another category of case that we're discussing here in the Mishnah. That's a machlekes. If someone braids her hair, or v'chein hakechelis, or she paints her eyes with makeup. V'chein hapekeses, which Rashi says his teachers told him that pekeses is that she fixes her hair with a comb or with her hands. That's combing the hair. Or some say what she would do is she would actually take some type of a dough and she would smear it on her face. And when she would take it off, it would make the flesh, the skin redder to give her a good complexion. But be that as it may, these have a machlekes in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says, you're chayiv by all the machatas. They're all malachas deraisa, which we're going to explain in the next daf. What are the malachas by these cases? The Rabbanan say that no, it's only rabbinically forbidden because it's not the normal way of doing these malachas. And therefore, it's only going to be rabbinically forbidden. And again, the Gemara is going to explain according to Rabbi Eliezer for what malacha deraisas are you chayiv for all these cases that we said in the Mishnah. But first, the Gemara qualifies the opening case of regarding the fingernails. Rabbi Eliezer says this whole machlekes in the Mishnah regarding when you're taking off the fingernails that you're going to be is a chib deraisa is only rabbinically forbidden? That machlek is only biyad. If you take it off with your hand, not with, let's say, a nail clipper, not with a vessel, that's Rabbanan say you're going to be exempt because it's not normal to cut off the fingernails like that during the week. They usually take a scissor or a nail clipper. So the machlekes was by hand. Av bakli, then everyone's going to agree that you're going to be chayiv, which actually Taisus brings that would be specifically according to Yehuda, the holds yichai b'melacha shen tzuk leguva because you don't really need the fingernail. But Rabbi Yehuda, that's what would be going like holds yichai b'melacha shen tzuk leguva. That's what we're saying. Everyone would agree that if you use a kli, you'd be chayiv. I think Marsa Pshita, obviously that this halach. We said this was the case in the Mishnah. Zu bezutzna. We said if you take off the fingernail with another fingernail, obviously we know that it's being done by hand. Says no. What would you say, Rabbanan beklinami patri? That actually Rabbanan, actually you would say hold your putter even if it's done with a kli. Now, why would you say they hold your putter with a kli? So Rashi says because it's not really geizes. What's the problem? What's malacha of taking off the fingernail? Which malacha are you doing? It's actually geizes. It's shearing the animal, taking off what grows from it's like growing. This generates from our body. So Rashi explains that because that would only be like the wool of an animal. Geizes like we're done in the Mishnah, we're shearing the wool only over there, but by human being's fingernail we wouldn't say it. Or Tais actually says no. You would think that Rabban hold like Reb Shimon, because we said this whole malacha of being chayiv for taking off the fingernails is only because Rabbi Yehuda malacha shen tzich legufa. We would have thought to say that actually Rabbanim would hold that by a kli also you'd be pater because you're like Reb Shimon holds malacha shen tzich legufa. You're pater because actually the Rashi interpretation the read does not like because he says it's not true. All living creatures have geziza. No one would say that by a person taking off his fingernail wouldn't be geziza. But either way, if you explain like Rashi like Taisus, you would think that actually Rabban hold that you're pater even with a kli. But then why do we say that it's talking about one fingernail with another one? It's even with a nail clipper. Because that's just telling you that even if you're using your hand, which is not the normal way, that even there, Eliezer holds you're going to be chayiv. Mashron, they're saying that no, it's not like the Rabbanan hold that with a kli you're also pater. No, they agree with a kli you can be chayiv, and that's the chiddush what we need Rabbi Elazar to say that the whole machlik is on bayad, but by kli Rabbanan would agree that you're going to be chayiv. Qualification number 2, Mamar Rabbi Elazar, again for Rabbi Elazar. He says that machlekes la'atzmai. This whole machlekes is if the person is doing it for themselves. That's Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayiv because a person could go ahead and get his fingernail in and cut it off in a way even without using a nail clipper. But if you're doing it for your friend, which sometimes they have to do these things, let's say when a neighbor has to go to the mikvah on Shabbos, everyone says you're going to be pater because you can't do your friend's fingernail so well without using a nail clipper. It's very hard. Yourself, you could get your fingers in. There's a way. Somehow the body has that coordination, that proprioception to get that figure and figure it out. But someone else's fingernail is very hard to do that. Then everyone would be going to be pater. Says Pshita, obviously be pater. Tziparnav. It says in the Mishnah, Tziparnav, his finger tanan. We learned he takes off his fingers. So of course we know that. Says Gemara, what would you say that actually Rabbi Eliezer? He holds even if you're doing it for your friend, even by hand, you can be chayev. But this says his fingernail is only like the Rabban is coming to tell you the strength of the Rabban who hold that even over there when it's your own you're going to be pater. But maybe Rabbi Eliezer holds you can be chayev even someone else's fingernail. That's when we need Rabbi Eliezer to say no, that's only going to be on his own fingernail, but someone else's fingernail that Rabbi Eliezer agrees that you're going to be pater. Mishnah continued and said, also, someone takes off, he pulls out hairs by hand. So that's also where our machlekes in the Mishnah, if that's deraisa or draban. So talking about the deraisa, how much hair are we talking about? So the deraisa says, if someone takes a scissorful of hair, that's chayiv, that's a liability for ripping out hair on Shabbos, which according to Rabbanan is only if you use a kli. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, is even if you do by hand. That's the measurement. So how much is a scissorful of hair that you can be chayiv? So maybe this is shtaim, it's 2 hairs. Says the Gemara, is it really 2 hairs? But Vatanya, in that brisa that we just quoted, that says it's the amount of a scissorful, the sefer of that brisa mentions in a different halacha, which is lukarcha. The Torah forbids a person, leisasimu karcha, when the person dies, a close relative, some type of pagan nations would have the custom to rip out their hair. A Jew is forbidden to do that. And how much is the violation of leisasimu karcha? Says the brisa shtaim, it's 2 hairs. Now obviously, if in the ratio of the brisa, when we're talking about cutting hairs on Shabbos, we said a different terminology of malay piazug, a scissorful, obviously it's not 2 hairs. Because then why would you say in the brisa a different terminology by karcha of saying 2 hairs? Says, no, it's not different. I must say v'chein karcha. And also for karcha, ishtaim is 2 hairs. But it's really the same amount of the sizzaful, which that's the liability of pulling out hairs on Shabbos from a person's head or his body. Similarly in the Brisa, like Rabbi Yehuda, that he says it's 2 hairs, where the Brisa says, if you take out a sizzaful of hair on Shabbos, you're going to be chayiv for geizes. For and how much is a sizzaful? Each time it's 2 hairs. So you see, like his interpretation that a sizzaful is 2 hairs. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, he disagrees on the whole halacha. He says no, it's achas. He says actually you're liable even for pulling out 1 hair, and you don't need a sizzaful. But the Chama agreed with Rabbi Eliezer that you're going to be chayiv even for 1 hair. How so? Is b'malak and levanis miter shcheres. If let's say you have a jet black hair, nice head full of hair, and you have the 1 white hair that's starting to come in, oy vey, we're getting old. Shafila achas chayiv, that if you're going to pull out 1 of those hairs, that 1 hair, the 1 white hair, you're going to be chayiv. Because that 1 hair bothers him, he doesn't want to look old. So therefore, pulling out that 1 hair is a significant act, and one would be liable for pulling out even 1 hair. Again, because it has a significance. And says the Gemara, actually interesting halacha, which halacha l'maisa, but David said this thing, you can't pull out the white hair even during the weekday. Forget about Shabbos. Shabbos, yes, 1 hair they would agree to be chayiv because of geizes, because it has the significance. Even during the weekday you can't do that. Because the pasuk says in the Bible, it says, a man's not allowed to wear, simlas isha, a woman's garment. What that means to say is that a man cannot beautify him in the feminine way, and women are usually particular about that, and they groom themselves in that way. A man is not allowed to pull out his white hair. He's not allowed to dye his white hair. That's a whole discussion. Again, what could you do and what can you not do with the grooming? But a man cannot just tweeze. A man cannot just do certain things. That's considered a feminine type of approach, and therefore that would be lo yilbash give a similis isha. Now, continuing to the halacha about the fingernail, the Gemara brings Tanya in the Brisa. Pirnal ben Lazar says, interesting halacha for the laws of Shabbos. It says tziporin shapir shuba, and this is a very difficult halacha to keep on Shabbos. A fingernail that the majority of it got detached, or vetzitzin, or the cuticles, which are these small little strips of skin that are coming out from the finger that are around the fingernail, shapir sharuban, the majority of it has been detached. It's very close to falling off. Oy, that's tsar. When you're having that, it's 2 types of tsar. One is the halachic tsar, and then there's the actual, we're going to talk about the physical tsar, but most of the fingernail, or the cuticle, is hanging off. So it says the Gemara like this. The Brisa says, B'yad, if you do it by hand, mutter, it's permitted. But cleave, using a vessel, which that's the biblical way, that's chayiv chatim michayiv achat. Now, before we finish the halacha, the Gemara asked, could there really be such a thing? Did b'kleave, you're doing with a tool, you're going to be chayiv achatos. U'b'yad mutter l'ketchila, if you do it by hand, it's going to be totally permitted. In other words, generally we have the halachic understanding, when you have a chayiv chatos, let's say you do it with a tool, then even if you do it by hand, at least rabbinically we're going to say it's forbidden, because if you do it by hand, you might come do it a kli. How could it be such an extreme that would kli is chayav chatas and b'yad mutter l'ketchila? So the Gemara addresses and says, you're right, hachikam. This is what the Brisa is saying. Pirshu, but if the majority of it is hanging off, then b'yad by hand is going to be mutter, it's going to be permitted. But kli with a vessel, it's going to be patabel asa, it's going to be exempted, but it's going to be forbidden. Loi pirshu ruben, so it's a different case. If the majority is not hanging off, that's where biyad by hand, it's going to be patabel asa, it's going to be exempt, but still forbidden, rabbinically. But klib, with a vessel is michayiv chata, so it's 2 different cases, so it's not extremes. Yes, they're always 1 step apart. When the majority is detached, then biyad mutter and b'kliv patabel asa. When the majority is not detached, it's more attached, then biyad it's patabel asa, but with a kli it's going to be chayiv chata. Now, the Gemara concludes, and Rabbi Yehuda says, Allah gives him a like this teaching. Now, however, the Gemara qualifies, which actually is like what's called al yibakaitzba. We can't really use this heter of the Gemara, even though it's really halach l'maisa that you could pull it off, because look at the next teaching, and this is where the Gemara, the daf ends. Amar Rabba B'chan Rabbi Yochanan says, but v'hu shapir sheklap b'mala. Where is the fingernail hanging from? It's where it's hanging from the top of the. Now, there's a machlekes Rashi and Taisus. What does this mean over here? Rashi learns what's the top? The top of the fingernail, the end, the fingertip. That's where it's starting to get detached. That's very painful. So that's where Mitzaras, I say, it pains him. So that's when you could pull it off by hand if the majority is already hanging. The problem is, Rabbeinu Tam explains that mala means the other side. It's the part that's attached closer to the body is called shamala. So lahalach lamaisa, the place can say you can't really do either one of them. Because you have machlekes Rashi and Taisus, which one is the one that we permit? According to Rashi, we permit when it's hanging from the edge. That's the painful one. That's what we permit to do by hand. According to Rabbeinu Tam says no. It's the part that's shamala is the fingernail up towards where it connects to the body. And because of that, that's why the Mishnah Berurah, there's a place can say that one technically can't really use this heter, although it really is a heter that the Gemara brings. What? Ein Beis Minute. So some ideas we spoke about today's daf was we explained the halacha in the Mishnah that says if you carry out a living person in a bed, so he said you're going to be potter even on the bed because, like we said, that's a tafel. But one thing the Gemara discusses is the living person himself. Says the Gemara, this is your potter on the living person is even according to Rabbanan that disagree with Reb Nassim. That's only by behema chayav ha'oif. The reason is because they stiffen themselves up. The animal when you're carrying, they stiffen themselves. But a living person, the Rabbanan agree that he does carry himself, and therefore the halacha of the Mishnah that you put on the person and hence subsequently also in the bed would be even according to Rabbanan. I Rabbi Yochanan says that Ben Beseira, who he permits selling a horse to a non-Jew, and the reason is because a living person carries himself, so a horse carries a living person. So even if you would rent it or lend it to a non-Jew, it wouldn't be a problem about Shavisas Behemtai. You would not be violating that because that's not a problem, because he's not doing malacha, because the Chayif Neisas Atzmai. And Rabbi Yochanan says that that's like Reb Nassim. Wait a second, why is that like Reb Nassim? A horse is for a person. The Rabbanan agree by a person Chayif Neisas Atzmai. Why is Rabbi Yochanan saying Rabbi Nassim like Ben Beseira? Says the Gemara, no, we're talking about a horse that's designated for birds. A horse for birds? Yes, Kedebei Vayodim, which those are the hunters, they have special horses for having the sparrows. They go and they predator birds and they catch the birds. Therefore, that's specifically like Reb Nassim, because Rabbanan hold that by birds, that the Chai is not Neisas because they make their body weight dead, and therefore you are considered carrying them. Now, but one thing the Gemara says, Reb Nassim agrees by kafis, if a person or the bird is tied, that then you are considered carrying them because they're not carrying themselves anymore because they're tied. And that the Gemara says, the Persians, how you allowed to sell the horse to the non-Jews, which includes the Persians, and the Persians, they don't move, they're like tied. So the Gemara, that's gaiva. They can get life and when they need to. When the cops are coming and they're running down, they run. So therefore, it's not really considered tied, and therefore that's why it's not a problem about carrying them on the horse on Shabbos. We learned in the Mishnah regarding carrying a dead person. That was a machlekes between Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, classic machlekes regarding malacha shen tzricha legufa, where you don't really, the way Rashi said, you don't really need the dead person over there. You just don't want him over here. That's not really considered needing the malacha, and that's where we have a machlekes. That the Gemara qualifies. So Shimon's going to say exempt even if you take out the dead person to bury him. What? That's not needed. What do you mean you need to bury him? No. I don't need him buried. He needs to be buried. Malacha shen legufa means to be me, the person, not the object. But said the Gemara, you don't need to have both legufa and legufa. All you need is legufa. So you don't need to have that the Torah has to be edited over there. All you have to do is that you want to read the same Torah, but it has to be for you, not the object. We learned also regarding a story that if someone takes a dead person to Carmelis, that it was even mutal ketchila. That's like Reb Shimon. What do you mean Reb Shimon? I does Isser Rabbanim according to Reb Shimon, but Allah Hashem Gufa. We say no, we're lenient because of covered abrius for the dead person, where it overrides the negative prohibition of leisasa, which is the rabbinic source in the Torah that you have to keep what the rabbis say. That it overrides that negative prohibition because of covered abrius of the dead person. Now, relating back to the halacha of the Mishnah, le'inyan of the Mishnah, we had a halacha that we brought that you're not allowed to tear off the simoni tumah of tzaras. Not allowed to tear it off. Now, unless you do 1 out of 2, so I said yichayv, because when you don't have 2 hairs, it's going to be matara. But 1 out of 3, we had a machlekes. So the Gemara wanted to bring a proof for one of the 2 opinions, because we have a contradiction between our Mishnah and a Brisa. Is a half a zayis going to be pater or going to be chayiv? Our Mishnah seems to say pater, because it only says if you take a zayis chayiv. But a Brisa is clear that you can be chayiv. Isn't it obvious that Brisa says the chayiv is from the gezayis? So of course it's significant. When you take it a half a zayis, you took out the tumah. You don't take it the whole thing. Once you diminished it from the zayis, there's no more tumah in the house. So therefore you can be chayiv. Our Mishnah was saying from a gezayis and a half. So you see that even though you diminished it to be now a kezayis, you're still going to be pater, because although it's leading towards that if something else happens, it's going to be significant, but right now it's not significant. So you see like the one who holds echad megimel that you're going to be pater. Says the Gemara, no, it could be that the case of Amish is from a mace gadol, which that's not even significant. It's not really even considered lowering the threshold. Therefore, you're pater, but could be that you'd be chayiv if it would be from a kezayis and a half. So it's no raya from the halacha of the Mishnah. Then we continue with the next Mishnah. Someone he cuts off his fingernails, either with one hand to the other hand or with his teeth. So too, regarding if it takes out his hair, or from his head, or from his mustache, from his beard, which we said in the Gemara, how much here are we talking about? It's Maloi Pi Hazog, a scissorful. How much is that? So the Gemara explains it's 2 hairs. But some say that no, it's 1 hair. But one thing the Gemara says that everyone agrees when one of them is white hair from the black hair, that then you be chayiv. And the Gemara even says, actually that's even forbidden on the weekday because of loy yilbash. That's forbidden even during the weekday because you're not do a feminine type of thing like grooming yourself, taking out the white hair from the black. Then the Mishnah continued, besides those cases, also braiding the hair or eye paint or combing the hair. That's machlekes if that's chayiv, which is meaning the iraisa, or is it only a shmuz, only rabbinically prohibited? And we'll explain next time what would be the biblical prohibitions of all these cases. But 2 qualifications the Gemara made that this whole machlekes is only by hand. But if it's done by the vessel, according to everyone, you're going to be chayiv. The Gemara says, why was that necessary to say as a chiddush? And also the machlekes is only if you're doing it for yourself. But if you're doing it for your friend, everyone agree that you need punt. Then we said the last halacha was regarding a fingernail that the majority of it has been detached. Now the reason why I said it's not negei halacha is because this that it says pirush klape mala, the Gemara says it has to be klape mala. Which one is lamala? So because of that suffix, we don't do either one of them. So he said, but if you do it by hand, it's going to be permitted. With a vessel, it's pat al asr. Now, but if let's say it was not the majority of it detached, then it's biyad pat al asr, and then Makli, it's going to be a chiv of chad. Therefore, he said not like one extreme to the other extreme. It's always going to be one step behind. This was 2 different cases that if it's Makli chayav chad, then biyad is going to be pat al asr. But again, if Makli is pat al asr, then biyad is going to be even much like a chiv. Thank you to any time for hosting us.